Book of Leviticus. Let me start with a shocking fact that will change how you see this book forever. Leviticus isn't just a random collection of old laws. It's actually a carefully crafted manual for creating the world's first truly equitable society. While other ancient civilizations were building their wealth on the backs of slaves and the oppressed, the Israelites were receiving instructions for a social system that protected the poor, liberated the enslaved, and redistributed wealth every 50 years. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, let's set the scene. Picture this. You're part of a massive group of former slaves who just escaped from Egypt. You've been wandering in the desert for months, and now you're camped at the base of Mount Sinai. Your leader Moses has just come down from the mountain with stone tablets containing 10 commandments, but apparently, God isn't finished talking. What happens next is the giving of Leviticus, which literally means, relating to the Levites, the priestly tribe responsible for maintaining Israel's spiritual life. But here's where it gets interesting. Leviticus isn't just about religious ceremonies. It's a comprehensive blueprint for building a society from scratch. Think about it, these people had spent 400 years as slaves in Egypt. They had no experience governing themselves, creating laws, or establishing social structures. They needed a complete system for everything from settling disputes to preventing disease outbreaks to maintaining economic stability. Now, let's break down what's actually in this book, because there's so much more than most people realize. Leviticus contains 27 chapters that can be divided into several major sections, each serving a specific purpose in creating this new society. The first section deals with sacrificial offerings, and before you roll your eyes thinking this is just about killing animals, consider what these sacrifices actually represented. In the ancient world, sacrifice was the primary way people connected with the divine realm. But the Levitical system was revolutionary because it democratized access to God. In other religions, only kings and high priests could approach the gods. Here, any person, regardless of social status, could bring an offering and find forgiveness, healing, or connection with the divine. There were 5 main types of offerings, each serving a different purpose. The burnt offering represented complete surrender and devotion. The grain offering was about gratitude for God's provision. The peace offering celebrated fellowship and communion. The sin offering dealt with unintentional wrongdoing, while the guilt offering addressed intentional violations that required restitution. Together, these created a comprehensive system for maintaining both spiritual and social harmony. But here's what's truly remarkable about this system. Unlike other ancient religions where the priests kept all the sacrificial meat for themselves, the Levitical system ensured that much of it was shared with the community, especially the poor and marginalized. The peace offerings, in particular, were essentially community barbecues where families and neighbors would gather to eat together, strengthening social bonds while fulfilling religious obligations. The second major section introduces us to the priesthood and their ordination. This isn't just about religious hierarchy. The priests served as judges, teachers, healers, and social workers all rolled into one. They were responsible for maintaining the health and welfare of the entire community. When someone had a skin condition, they went to the priest. When there was a legal dispute, they consulted the priest. When someone needed to learn the law, the priest was their teacher. This brings us to one of the most misunderstood aspects of Leviticus, the purity laws. Modern readers often dismiss these as primitive superstitions, but they were actually sophisticated systems for maintaining public health and social order. The laws about clean and unclean foods, for example, prevented many diseases that plagued other ancient peoples. The regulations about bodily discharges and skin conditions were early forms of quarantine that prevented the spread of infectious diseases in crowded camp conditions. But the purity laws went deeper than just physical health. They created a symbolic language for understanding the difference between life and death, order and chaos, wholeness and brokenness. When someone became ritually unclean, they weren't being punished. They were being reminded of human mortality and the need for divine grace to restore wholeness. The most dramatic example of this is the Day of Atonement, described in chapter 16. Once a year, on this solemn day, the high priest would enter the most sacred space in the tabernacle and perform elaborate rituals to cleanse the entire nation from their accumulated sins and impurities. This wasn't just religious theater. It was a profound psychological and social reset that allowed the community to start fresh each year. One of the most powerful elements of this ceremony was the scapegoat ritual. 2 goats were chosen by lot. One was sacrificed, its blood sprinkled in the holy place to make atonement. But the other goat, the scapegoat, had all the people's sins symbolically placed on its head before being sent into the wilderness to die. This vivid ceremony gave the people a concrete way to visualize their sins being removed and carried away, providing psychological relief and social cohesion. Now we come to what I consider the most revolutionary part of Leviticus, the Holiness Code in chapters 17 through 26. This is where we find some of the most famous and most controversial passages in the entire Bible. The command to love your neighbor as yourself appears here for the first time in human literature. The protection of immigrants and refugees is mandated with the reminder that you were strangers in Egypt. Justice for the poor and marginalized is not just recommended but required by divine law. But perhaps the most radical concept in the entire book is the Jubilee, described in chapter 25. Every 50 years, all debts were to be forgiven, all slaves freed, and all land returned to its original families. Imagine the economic implications of this system. It meant that no family could be permanently impoverished, no person could be enslaved forever, and no individual could accumulate unlimited wealth at others' expense. This was economic justice on a scale that wouldn't be attempted again until modern times. The Sabbath laws that appear throughout Leviticus were equally revolutionary. Not only were people required to rest 1 day in 7, but the land itself was to rest every 7th year. No farming, no harvesting, just letting the earth recover while the poor were free to glean whatever grew naturally. This wasn't just about environmental stewardship, though it certainly had that effect. It was about breaking the cycle of endless work and accumulation that enslaves both people and the planet. These laws addressed something that every society struggles with: how to balance individual freedom with collective responsibility, how to encourage productivity while preventing exploitation, how to maintain order while preserving justice. The Levitical system created checks and balances that prevented the concentration of power and wealth that had characterized the Egyptian system they had escaped. But Leviticus also deals with intimate aspects of human life that many people find difficult or controversial today. The sexual ethics outlined in chapters 18 and 20 reflect ancient Near Eastern concerns about maintaining clan identity and preventing the social chaos that could result from unclear family relationships. While modern readers might disagree with specific prohibitions, the underlying principle was protecting the most vulnerable members of society, especially children and women, from exploitation and abuse. The food laws that appear throughout the book have puzzled interpreters for centuries. Why were certain animals forbidden while others were permitted? Some scholars suggest these laws were about maintaining cultural distinctiveness, preventing Israel from assimilating into surrounding cultures. Others propose health reasons, noting that many forbidden foods were more likely to cause disease in ancient climates. Still others see symbolic meanings, with clean animals representing order and completeness while unclean animals symbolized chaos and incompleteness. What's fascinating is how these seemingly restrictive laws actually created freedom. By establishing clear boundaries and expectations, they eliminated much of the anxiety and conflict that comes from uncertain social roles and relationships. Everyone knew their place, their responsibilities, and their rights. This created a stable foundation for creativity, spiritual growth, and social development. The book concludes with a series of blessings and curses that outline the consequences of following or ignoring these laws. But these aren't arbitrary punishments imposed by an angry deity. They're natural consequences that flow from the choices people make. Follow the principles of justice, mercy, and holiness, and you'll create a society where everyone can flourish. Ignore them, and you'll create systems of oppression that eventually destroy themselves. This brings us to why Leviticus remains relevant today. We live in a world struggling with many of the same issues that faced ancient Israel: economic inequality, environmental degradation, social fragmentation, and the loss of shared moral values. The Levitical vision offers an alternative to both unconstrained capitalism and authoritarian socialism. It envisions a society where individual rights are balanced with collective responsibilities, where economic activity serves human flourishing rather than just profit maximization, and where the most vulnerable are protected rather than exploited. Modern movements for social justice, environmental stewardship, and economic equality often echo themes that first appeared in Leviticus. The civil rights movement drew heavily on Levitical concepts of human dignity and divine justice. Environmental activists find inspiration in the Sabbath and Jubilee principles, Economists studying alternative models of development look to the Levitical system for insights into sustainable prosperity. Even if you don't share the religious beliefs that underlie Leviticus, you can appreciate its psychological wisdom. The regular cycles of work and rest, the periodic resets of social relationships, the communal rituals that reinforced shared values, all contributed to mental health and social stability in ways that modern psychology is just beginning to understand. So the next time someone tells you that Leviticus is just an outdated collection of primitive laws, you can tell them they're missing one of humanity's earliest and most sophisticated attempts to create a just society. This ancient book tackled problems we're still struggling with today, and offered solutions that were thousands of years ahead of their time. Whether you approach Leviticus as religious scripture, historical document, or social philosophy, it challenges us to imagine what society could look like if we truly prioritized justice, mercy, and holiness over power, profit, and personal advantage. In our fractured world, that might be exactly the kind of ancient wisdom we need to rediscover. What aspects of the Levitical vision do you think would benefit our modern world? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the books that have shaped human civilization.